What's up guys? Matt here with a review for Ant-Man and the Wasp, the sequel to the 2015 MCU film that introduced the character. Minor spoilers ahead. This film takes place 2 years after the events of Civil War. Scott Lang, after running off with Captain America, decided to turn himself into authorities, and he's been living under house arrest the whole time. And it's getting close to his time of release when he has a vision that he's back in the quantum realm with Janet Van Dyne, Hank Pym's wife mentioned in the first film. This is coupled to the fact that Hank and his daughter Hope have managed to open a portal to the quantum realm, and now they think that with Scott's help, they might actually be able to bring Hank's wife back into the real world. Unfortunately, this also gets the attention of Ava, who wants to use the technology they're using to heal herself. She was in an accident as a kid, and now she's able to phase through objects. Unfortunately, it's killing her, and she'll be dead before too long if she doesn't find a way to heal herself. Let me just say, I did like Ant-Man. I thought it was fun, but a bit forgettable. I don't remember much about it, and I barely remember the villain at all. Ant-Man was not one of my favorite MCU films, and Ant-Man and the Wasp I don't think will be either. But I do think it's a step up. Paul Rudd is the only writer who's returning from the first film. Peyton Reed is returning as director, and I think they're working with a better script this time around. The first half of the film is better than the second half. It's more solid. It's got great writing, great jokes. It's lighthearted, but also grounded enough so that we can take it a little more seriously. But then we get to the second half, and it kind of devolves a bit into a more cartoony nature. Some of the jokes and the characters just go a little bit too far overboard. Most of the main cast and the side characters return for this film. Paul Rudd, of course, returns as a titular character, and as always, he's a lot of fun to watch. He's a very down-to-earth comedian, and he brings that to his roles. But I did notice, however, that he seemed to be channeling Deadpool for this character. And I don't remember him doing that for the first film, but it was very obvious in this one. Abby Ryder Fortson, who plays Cassie, his daughter, returns as well, and I really like what they did with their relationship in this film. I didn't care so much for that subplot in the first film, with Lang worrying about losing visitation rights with his daughter in that film. Luckily, what they do in this film, I like what they do a lot better. Judy Greer and Bobby Cannavale both return as well, but their roles are kind of pushed back, they're barely in it, and they're used more for comedic effect than anything else. And I like what they did with them. But most of all, I like what they did with Cassie and Steven. Because Steven, he's still under house arrest when all this is going on, so he has to work with Hank and Hope in secret. And Cassie finds out when she does, instead of getting angry that, he's risking going back to jail, she's happy with him and she supports him because she honestly thinks that what he's doing is the right thing. And I like that about her character, and there's a conversation between the two that kind of foreshadows, or seems to be foreshadowing, something with her character somewhere down the line. And I don't know what happens in the comics, but I think that'd be an interesting concept or avenue to explore. Michael Pena returns, and as with the first film, he's one of the best things about this film. Evangeline Lilly, of course, returns, and this time we actually get to see her suit up as the Wasp. And one thing I really liked about this film were the fight scenes. Props to the stunt coordinator and Evangeline Lilly's stunt double, Ingrid Kleinig. They did a really good job with the fight scenes. A number of actors are also joining the cast. Lawrence Fishburne comes in the movie as a former colleague of Hank's, who has a bit of a grudge against him. Michelle Pfeiffer plays Hank's wife in the film, who got lost in the quantum realm. She's not in it for very long, but it's always great to see Michelle Pfeiffer. The villain of the film is a woman named Anna, aka Ghost. She's played by Hannah John Kamen. Sorry if I mispronounced that. And she does a really good job with the character. The thing is, I don't really think this is a very memorable villain. I don't really see people having too fond of memories of this villain. Nevertheless, I will say I think this is a very well-written villain. One of the keys for making a good villain is to write them in such a way that the audience can feel sympathy for them. And they do that with her. This character, she's not motivated by power or money, not even motivated by revenge. She's motivated strictly by self-preservation. Like I said, she has the ability to phase through objects, she can move through objects, But this ability is killing her, and everything she does in the movie is strictly so she can live. My main problem with her is just, like I said, I don't think she's very memorable, and there's another reason for that, and I'll get to that in a moment. But another problem I have with her is that the writers seem to be pushing on some dialogue to her to make it more obvious that she's the villain. I don't like that. I don't like it when they do this. Like, her actions speak for themselves. We can get that she's the villain. You don't need to have the dialogue for her basically saying, I'm the villain. And if you're worried about ambiguity, sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's good to blur the line between villain and good guy. This brings me to one of my problems with the film. There are a lot of side plots in it. You have the main plot with Hank and Hope and Lang trying to get Janet back from the quantum realm. You have everything with Ava and her backstory and wanting to heal herself. You have Martin Lawrence and his grudge with Hank. You have everything with Lang being under house arrest. And I will give that credit. At least it was entertaining because the feds, they're being headed by a guy played by Randall Park. And I remember him from The Interview. He was terrific in that, and he's terrific in this. Michael Pena, he's heading this company, and Lang's working with them. They set up security systems. But the most egregious for me is this subplot involving a second villain played by Walton Goggins. He's this business entrepreneur who tries to steal Hank's technology. While I love Walton Goggins, I think that entire subplot should have been scrapped so that they could have focused a lot more on Ava and developed her more as a character and as a villain, because I think if they had given her a lot more time to develop, they could have pushed her into a much more memorable character and even put her as an above-average villain in MCU terms. But as it was, they just didn't utilize her enough. They didn't give her enough time, so she's, pretty forgetful. Like I said before, I think the second half kind of lags, becomes a bit too cartoony. Also, I think some of the scenes, it seemed like the script was specifically written to include them. Like, for instance, the scene where Antman, he's huge, he comes out of the water right next to the ferry. It almost seems like the script was specifically written to include that scene. They don't include the ants, or they don't utilize them as much as they did in the first film, except in a few key scenes. There's no Antony, like in the first film, but we already have too many subplots, so I'm kind of grateful for that. The mid-credit scene, there's a mid-credit scene and an end-credit scene, so there's two. The end-credit scene it's cute, but not really necessary. The mid-credit scene, I'm not going to spoil it, but I will say anyone who's paid attention to the MCU will probably have seen this coming, and it makes sense. It provides continuity. One last thing I'd like to say is that one of the big questions that people have been asking, as well as with Hawkeye, is where was Ant-Man during Infinity War? And I'll spoil this now, Hawkeye isn't even mentioned in this film. As far as Ant-Man, I don't think this film actually answers that. You can come up with all kinds of, maybes, but as for the actual why, or the where Ant-Man was, the film does not answer that. And I think if anyone's going to answer it, it needs to be Marvel. The film has a bit of a juggling act with a number of different subplots and a lackluster second half. But overall, I'm going to give the film a 7.5 out of 10. It's fun, it's funny, it's got great performances and some great fight sequences. The visual effects are pretty good, with a few parts here and there that could have used some touching up. But I particularly like what they did with Ava when she was phasing. I actually thought that was pretty interesting. And that's what I got. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.